Like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl, 'cause we're the Miami.
Well, we don't get to talk a lot about Super Bowls. We're hoping, but the guy that joins us right now knows a thing or two about Super Bowls and undefeated teams, as we're joined this morning by Hall of Famer Larry Csonka. Csonka, good morning, and how you doing?
Well, not as fast as I used to be, but I'm still getting around. Or I guess at my age, I can't complain. You know, the alternative isn't a great scenario. So I'm happy to be getting around.
Well, listen, the book, and we're going to get into the book and some of the stories, and there's some great stuff in here. Head on with Larry Csonka. I know it's something you wanted to get done. I always wonder when you do a book, did it turn out the way you wanted? Were you pretty happy with it?
Well, initially, no. When we first wrote it down, and I got together with Mitch Kaplan, some of those guys, we started talking about it at Books and Books. And then I wrote some things down, and I thought, I'm trying too hard. You know what I mean, Joe? It's just like the first day of camp. You come in, and you think you're going to just knock everything down, and you're going to take over, and it just doesn't work out that way. You got to learn a whole new offense, all that. Well, writing a book is kind of the same format for me. I tried it, got the rough copy, but then we started to hone it. We started to talk about it. And we started to laugh and talk about the humor side of it and some of the intriguing parts, the drama, if you will, going to the Super Bowl, the things that happened. And then it started to come out. It took it took 6 to 8 months to really refine it. But I'm pretty happy with the way it came out.
There's just so many different parts from you to get into the team and the guys you came in with, the relationship. It's pretty clear your relationship with Jim Kick, which is really a cool story coming from college right into the Miami Dolphins. But some of the pranks, I mean, listen, the pranks are – you're the only guy that I know that ever pulled a prank at a Super Bowl on Don Shula's room and guest and running up a tab on him. I know we did it on Bob Greasy. We did it on Marino. But you had the basketballs to do it on Don Shula.
Well, I kind of fell into that. That was an awkward thing. We just happened. Jim Kick and I were standing there staring at that. We looked at that. I thought it just occurred to me that that's right down the hall from where we're at. So I picked up the envelope. He was not happy when he found out. Good thing we won that one.
Yeah, I would say so. So Zonk, the great part is, so when this happens, those guys never know, because I saw Bob Greasy's reaction my rookie year and how he took it. I saw Marino when they go to check out, and they're going, how'd I get this bill? I didn't even eat here. Like, who did this? And they're going through it, and you're getting ready to play a game as they're checking out, and you see Hall of Fame guys really concerned about this tab before the game, and it used to just make me laugh my ass off just thinking about it. But hey, I got to get
that was a scenario. Coach Shula said, "Don't get all tied up in people and family and everything. This is a game weekend. Right. Don't worry about the bill. Worry about those things on Monday or Tuesday." Until it was his bill, and he couldn't figure out where it came from.
Oh, my gosh, I still crack
up. I wasn't
up.
hit on the bus. I wasn't handy there. He didn't see me for a little while.
Hey, Larry, so the other story is, and I know through the years, I know the guys on our teams in the 80s cracked up, going back to Stanfield and Fernandez and the alligator hunt and deciding to find an alligator and bring it back with the thought of whether to tape its mouth or not and put it in Shula's private shower. You got to tell that story. That's a classic.
Well, Fernandez and Stanfield went out hunting or fishing, no telling what they were going to come back with. It could have had a caged gorilla or something. Who knows?
Right.
They had a baby gator in the back of the truck, and when I saw it, I remembered Shula being spooky about some little pieces of rubber that I found on the field. He thought it was a snake, and he took off running one time. And I thought, he's afraid of critters. So when I saw the gator, the only part I had in that whole thing was I had the idea to put it in his shower. And Fernandez did it. I kept the secretary out of the way, and we got through his office and got the gator into his shower. And he came bolting all the way out to the parking lot in the all-together. I'm glad he has a sense of humor, because otherwise I would have been I'd have been playing in Green Bay in about 2 shakes.
Right. I always curious, who did he think was responsible for that? Were you his number one choice or Jim Kick?
No, he ran straight to Kick in the locker room. Kick was sitting in his locker because he didn't really care. He was tired. And Shula ran up to him and started screaming about a gator, and he told him, how do you know you're not arguing with a guy that had the vote to tape its mouth shut? Otherwise you might be a eunuch right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. By the way, the other part, of course, and a lot of this book goes back to Coach Shula and the adjustment you guys had to make when Coach Shula got there and because everybody loved Coach Wilson. I know he's really popular with the players, and now all of a sudden you realize this guy is all business from conditioning, amount of practices every day, assigned weight was as I know, was a serious thing. Talk about that adjustment with when you guys realized what Coach Shula was all about.
Well, it was a major adjustment. A lot of us didn't think we were going to stay. You know full well what I'm talking about, Joe. Anybody that played for Shula knows what I'm talking about. Extreme disciplinarian. It's my way or the highway. And he didn't cut any bones about it. At the time he got there, I didn't see anything promising. I didn't realize that Monty Clark was going to be our offensive line coach. First time I met Coach Shula, he's telling me I got to drop from 242 down to 232 or something. And we got into it, and I went in his office and told him, he said, when you come in my office, you don't have to talk to me as head coach anymore. We're talking man to man. So when you come in and shut the door, it's just you and I, not in front of the team now.
Right.
But in his office, he said, you played for him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He said, just, put your hair down and let it go. Tell me what you think. So I walked in and sat down, and he said, what do you think? I said, I don't think I like you very much. I think, I don't see me fitting into his offense from what he had at Baltimore. And he thought for a minute, looked at me, he said, I don't like you very much either. He said, at least we have that in common. Everybody kind of laughed, and it kind of went on from there. But that's the kind of guy he was. It was going to be his way no matter what. So you had to recognize that. But then you had to decide whether you thought you could fit in or not. And for a long time there, I didn't think I was going to fit in. But then Monty Clark started bringing Kuchenberg and Langer and Little and people, Norm Evans and Wayne Moore. The list goes on and on. And suddenly I thought, I better wake up here because this is starting to look like a power running game basis. And that's how it turned out.
So Zonk, and I'm bouncing around on some of the great stuff. And some of this stuff I didn't know. I know the team was kind of broken up over the World Football League. What I didn't realize, Zonk, was the amount of money that you were making with the Dolphins and what you and Warfield and Kick, that amount of money, what was that like and how difficult was that situation to know going from one amount of money to the most to a lot more and had that great team? How difficult was that? And then you had to come back and play one more year for the Dolphins.
Yeah, that was the tough part. What the last thing you just alluded to, Joe, was coming back for that last year. And Coach Shula called me in his office along with Jim Kick and Paul Warfield separately, actually one at a time. We went in to see him. And he said, I don't blame you for doing what you did. Someone offered me a contract of 10 or 15 times my going salary. He said I'd have to give it a lot of thought. But at the same time, he said, I want you to do this for me out of respect for me, out of respect for our relationship, is I like you to keep your attention centered on this year that we're going to play for the for the Dolphins this year, and not be talking about the World Football League to the press or any of the media. And I thought that seemed like a very reasonable thing. I did not realize how tough that was going to be, but I did my very best to live up to what I promised him I'd do, and I tried not to do that. But at the same time, that was a very tough scenario. Think about that as a head coach. You're coaching people, and you're not going to have them this next year. The three guys who were pretty primary guys in that offense were going to walk away, and that's why they call it pro football. If I could do it over again, well, I'd probably pretty much do the same thing because I don't think I'd ever get $1 billion out of Joe Robbie under any circumstances.
Right.
But had it been a little different scenario, it's tough when you go back and look and you put today's dollars on it. It doesn't seem like much at all. But then you remember in that time, in that era, that was quite a spectacular situation that we got into there with John Bassett. And it, we went into depth in it in the book and talked about it. And we talked about the relationship, how that broke down with the personalities of John Bassett, how it broke down with the personalities of Don Shula and Joe Robbins. And then coming back finally in '79 and got to play one last year with the Dolphins was kind of a treat, to be honest with you.
Yeah, just great stuff. Hey, of all the guys, and it's so funny because you did movies, you had your own show, hunting and fishing show. You got a chance to meet a lot of people, a lot of movie stars, and you talk about your relationship and being with Lee Majors and Burt Reynolds and of all the people, and the one guy that you became really good friends with, that every time I watch highlights of him, he was a mean son of a gun, was Dick Butkus, one of the meanest human beings, body slamming people, would look to fight people. I've heard Bob Greasy tell stories about him, and you became good friends with him. How the heck did that happen?
We had the same agent, guy named Ed Keating out of the Management Corporation up there in Cleveland. We had the same agent, and because of that, we got talking. Several times we were at same business meetings with the agent, and spent some time having lunch and talking with each other, and got to be pretty good friends outside of butting heads. By that time, I think we only met each other on one or two occasions after that on a field where we had to play each other. But, I had tremendous respect for Dick. You don't have to watch too many movies to realize what kind of ball player he was. He was a great one. He just didn't have a very good team around him. I, fortunately, was a pretty good football player, but I had a fabulous team around me. That was the difference.
Yeah.
But tell one story. I think I put this in the book about when he had the Shetland pony and Dick didn't know anything. Our families lived next door to each other up in DeLand. And Dick had a little pony that he bought for his daughter. He had never been around animals. And I knew that was a mean little pony because I walked up to him, watched his ears. I could read his distinguishing factors growing up as a kid doing animal nose. And Butkus started doing that pony, and I thought that pony's going to kick him, but it didn't kick him. It turned and bit him. And when it did, he was trying to talk his daughter into getting on the pony and coordinating the whole thing. When that pony bit him, he open slapped that pony on the face so fast it knocked the pony right off its feet, flat on its side, out. It looked like it was out cold to me. His daughter ran in the house. I grew up in the country. I've not seen many people slap a pony and knock it out.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
That's a story about Dick Butkus that's in there.
Oh, that is great. So the other one is you just happened to throw, and I know a lot of us through Jim Kick, was the Elvis Presley. So did you actually get to hang out with Elvis a little bit? And what was Elvis like? I just watched the Elvis movie here, the latest one that was out. I was just curious.
Joe, he's a country boy. That's the best I can tell you. It sounds like I was close friends with him. I was not. I was casual friends with him. Jim Kick got to know Elvis pretty well, shot pool with him, went over to his house quite a bit when we were there in Memphis. And on a couple occasions, I went with Jim and got to be around Elvis for an hour or two. And fascinated with football, grew up in the country, had a kind of a country background, and had a great sense of humor. He enjoyed life, and he particularly enjoyed football. And I think had he not picked up that guitar, he might have ended up on a football field somewhere because of his interest in the way he'd ask about it and then sit and listen quietly. And I got the feeling that he would have been a good football player. That's the way I think.
Wow, that's great. So earlier today, Csonka, I just want to let you know, and we were talking about Belichick and the dominance that Patriots have had with Brady for like 20 years, and we had to deal with that. And I was talking about, how motivated he is now to try to get Coach Shula's winningest all-time coach record, which he's a few years away from if he keeps winning enough games. But the thing about it is, and my partner back here, Woody, asked me about, but what about all the cheating stuff and what was Shoes like? And I said, listen, man, there's a story in the book. If you want to know about Coach Shula playing the right way, I love that story about the game plan with the Raiders that was turned over to Monty Clark. And you guys, I think, end up losing that game, but everybody was curious what Shoes did with the game plan. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, we played Oakland Raiders out in Oakland, and the stadium was being worked on, so we couldn't practice in the stadium the day before, or couldn't use our locker room in the stadium the day before because it was being worked on. And so we had to use their locker room, and they had just vacated it just hours before for the day before the game practice. So I went in, and one of the players was there. Defensive tackle played with me at Syracuse, so I was going to go over and use his locker, and I was looking around for something in his locker to get so I could write him a note and tell him that I'd used his locker, or kid him about it.
Yeah.
Because I was going to be playing dead against him the next day. And I opened the compartment there at the top of the locker, a little stash place, a little box at the top of the locker there that I opened. And there's the game plan for the next day.
Wow.
That says, you know the importance of a game plan. For those people listening, that's a detailed situation that says what they're going to do when we do this or we do that, they're going to do this to counter it. Well, when you know what the other guy is, that's like a boxer knowing how the other guy is planning to block the punch. If you know for sure what he's going to do, you fake that and come around with a roundhouse the other way. And that was very important. And when I realized I had the game plan in my hand, by the time the other team realized we know what they're going to do, we would be 14 to 21 points ahead. So I handed it to Monty Clark, and he said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't know, and I never saw it here."
Right.
And I figured he'd take it straight to Shula, and he did. Well, we lost the game. After the game, I was kind of upset, to say the least. And I went and found Monty Clark and said, "Monty, what the hell happened?" I said, "Did you take that to Coach Shula?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, did he look at it?" He said, "No, he wouldn't have anything to do with it, wouldn't even touch it, wouldn't even look at it, told me to throw it away."
Wow.
And, well, there it is. That was a playoff game. That was a big game for that year, and that tells you the story. I mean, all you had to do is be aware of what they were planning, how down and distance dictates, and that you could find that on that game plan, and you would know what to set up and make it look like they were strong coming against it, and then go the other way.
Right.
People like Warfield and yourself, things could happen very quickly, and we could have jumped out to a 14 to 21 point lead. Instead, they never looked at it, threw it away. Now that was an instance. I tell you that story at my own. It's not complimentary to me, but I figure if you're stupid enough to leave your game report around,
I deserve to use it. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to change the pressure in the football or do some kind of crazy thing to actually flat cheat. But when someone carelessly leaves a game plan out, that's kind of. I grew up in a different part of the country, I guess, but if you do something that stupid, then you need to pay the price, so you don't make mistakes like that. But that's one person's view versus another, and Shula is just what he says he is. He's just going to win by the rules or he won't.
It's funny because you got a lot of Coach Shula stuff in here, and why not? As one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach of all time, and winningest coach, and everything else that he's done. You had a real unique relationship. You guys would go at it, and yet I know you respect him as much as anybody that you've ever been around. Just real quickly, just the relationship through the years and going through everything as a young man to literally at age 90 when we all saw him pass away.
Joe, I didn't like the man when I first met him. And my first reaction was to stay away from him and kind of dodge, and as most of us were, and try to avoid it. But at the same time, the intensity, the willingness to work hard, to sacrifice started to come through. Putting little things up when the tough get going, or when the going gets tough, the tough get going, things like that. I thought that was nonsense. But it's not nonsense if you live it. And that's what we didn't understand when he first got there, that he lives that. That was him. That's how he lived his life. He believed in those things and put them up. And once we started to win, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. And we started to win. When we started to win, we started to realize that what he's talking about is for real and it is achievable. And suddenly the chalice was there to be grasped. And he's talking Super Bowl. And, I know in this song it says, you're talking Super Bowl. Well, that's when most of us on the team in 1970, 71 realized that we had what it takes. And if we follow his path, it is obtainable. So from an extreme dislike and feeling like I just wanted to get out of there, it started to change and morph over the years into a thing that you realize he's right. What he's talking about is true and it's right and it's the way to do it. And we morphed into a better team, into a great team, and into the very best team ever. And as a result, it was teamwork that put us there. And I bring that out in the book. That 72 season came down to Charlie Babb, a rookie, making a big play in the Cleveland game. There's several other instances that I refer to in the book about what a difference someone that wasn't even a starter made in order for us to obtain that title.
So many great stories, just incredible in this book.
It boils down to whether you follow his philosophy or not doesn't matter. If you don't, you're going to leave his presence. But as it went on, it became easier to follow his outline because we were winning, and that made the difference. Wow. And when we lost him, I think all of us took a breath because he was such a dominant force. You know what I'm talking about, Joe. You played for him. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You just don't think about that guy laying down and dying. It just he was always such a force that it shocked me, and that's when I decided it's time to write some things down, just like he did.
Yeah, Larry, just great stuff. Head on with Larry Csonka. And Csonka, I got Woody's going to put in the information here, but you're going to be down. We're going to have a special night, and we want all Dolphin fans to come out because you've got so many great stories. Nobody tells stories like you do. They're in the book, and there's a lot more. It's going to be March 31st, Woody, coming up on a Friday night. It starts at 7 o'clock, but it's some really cool stuff. Go ahead and give it to me if you will.
All right, so Coral Gables Congregational Church, 3010 DeSoto Boulevard. It's right across from the Biltmore.
Right.
And
it's right across from the Biltmore.
Yeah, $30 is the admission price here. It's going to get you a copy of the book as well, which is really awesome. And Csonka, you're going to personalize these books for people after the discussion with you and Joe, which is just really cool. And one ticket will get 2 people in as well.
Yeah,
you get
man,
one copy of the
great.
book. A couple people can go, but yeah, this is a very, very cool event. We have the information if you'd like on our Twitter account at Joe Rose Show. We'll also have it right there on the front page of WQAM.com. So you can just click the link, take you right to the page, you get your tickets, and March 31st, right there at Coral Gables across from the Biltmore.
We don't get Larry down here a lot in Audrey, and it's special to Larry. Anytime, I always say this to you, I sound like a little kid, but anytime you're down here, life's a lot better having you around with us down here in South Florida. So I hope we have more of these. But Csonka, thanks, and I can't wait for March 31st. It's going to be a lot of fun spending some time with you.
I'm looking forward to it at the same time, Joe. There's always more Shula stories. You get 2 or 3 guys that played for him. There's always new stories coming out.
Yeah, and it's good to sing. And Larry, this sings at a church, which is good because that will control me a little bit. So I'm still trying to score points with the big man. So thanks, Larry.
Yeah. Make sure there's rubber bottoms on that chair, Joe. We can get hit by lightning.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Larry.
Thank
Join
you.
us.